Tim and Kyle. We got Tim Leonard with us now, live from Charlotte. All right, Tim. Notre Dame's still pretty good here, is what I'm sensing from the first few minutes of this game on our TV up here.
Yeah, apparently Notre Dame does not care at all about that stat of no one who has ever won the ACC tournament has won the national championship. They have come out and looked motivated and ready to go against a Virginia team that, man, they've lost 3 in a row, and they're staring 4 losses in a row right in the face, which is kind of crazy. I know when Syracuse beat them, they were on a streak of 18 straight times winning a game following a loss, and now here they are on a 4-game losing streak potentially going into the tournament. All 4 of these teams are going to be fine, and you're just looking to improve your seeding this weekend. Same goes for Syracuse and Duke in the nightcap, but this has been a strong start for the Irish. I think the Vegas odds are continuing to grow on them being the favorite to win it all.
Yeah, they've looked like the best team in the country since probably mid-March last season. They won the title last year, and nothing has changed really at any point this season. All right, Tim, so we're looking at this from Syracuse's perspective. We talked about it yesterday and today. Terry Foy had his bracketology out yesterday. Syracuse, he had him as the 2 seed already, and now Hopkins has lost since then. Does it feel like if Syracuse wins tonight, they're going to be legitimately that high in the NCAA tournament when the bracket comes out on Sunday?
Yeah, Notre Dame just scored again, by the way. That's the cheers. But yes, I think this game is basically for the 2 seed in a way. Whoever wins this game, Brian, would be my guess. I feel like Hopkins has fallen behind to the 3 seed line. You also had Denver lose last night, which is interesting because that's another bid stealer, and the bubble is starting to get a little bit murkier. But to me, I mean, it's odd that Duke is still ahead of Syracuse in RPI. The Blue Devils are number 2 in RPI. Syracuse is 4th going into this game tonight. And I view Syracuse, if they get a win, as pretty much locked into the 2 seed. And if Duke were to get a win, they'd probably have a strong case for the 2 seed, and then the Orange are probably looking at a 3 or a 4 seed. So not a ton that can sway just because of what happened last night. That was mostly good news for Syracuse. I know they beat Hopkins. Actually, last time we were here was at this same venue in Charlotte when Syracuse took down Hopkins, and you'd like to keep that as a top 5 RPI win and everything. But you're fighting for Hopkins for the seed lines, and it feels like Syracuse now, if they were to play well in this ACC tournament, would be ahead of Hopkins probably.
All right, and I guess here's the real question about it all. What is more important for Syracuse in this weekend? Like winning these games and trying to win the ACC tournament and get a higher seed, or, as you said, nobody that's won this tournament has ever won the national championship, which is kind of crazy because literally everyone that has played this tournament has national championships on their resume, or getting some rest and preserving your health and body for next week.
Yeah, I mean, it's the age-old question. I guess we should note that the ACC tournament hasn't happened since 2019, so it's not like we have a ton of history of teams, it's like a curse or something, but it is kind of a crazy stat when you think about it. I think if you're Syracuse, you still have a good amount to play for here. If you get the 2 seed, that's a big difference than being a 4 or 5 seed, and your quarterfinal matchup is probably a lot better looking in terms of the bracket and everything, especially your first game. I mean, you're probably playing a team like maybe a Utah in the first game, who the Orange played already this season and beat if you're the 2 seed, and you'd feel really good about hosting a team like that in the first game. And obviously it's no cakewalk. I mean, I was just thinking back today on Duke when they played Delaware in the first round last year, and Delaware had them on the ropes, and that's a good Delaware team that Syracuse played this year. So given the history and everything, you could make a case for either. I don't think this is the most important game necessarily. If Syracuse loses, they get to rest up, so there's pros and cons to both. But if Syracuse could go on a 3-4 game winning streak into the NCAA tournament, you'd also probably feel better about their chances because it would prove that they're playing their best lacrosse of the season.
And Tim Leonard with us. He's down in Charlotte right now. He'll be on the air at about 2 hours and change over on TK. Scheduled face-off 8 o'clock for the Orange and Duke tonight. And, I guess the third argument for all of this is where Syracuse hasn't been recently, right? They haven't been in a tournament. There has been no ACC tournament under Gary. It hasn't existed until this year. They haven't been in the NCAA tournament now yet under Gary. Probably the idea of actually playing and winning games like this could do more for this team, besides the seeding, besides the rest, to actually go out and win a pressure-packed big-time game here this weekend.
That's a good point, and let's keep in mind Syracuse is still a young team. That's the exciting thing about just the future of the program. When I'm looking at Notre Dame right now, they're going to lose a good chunk of their roster after this year. Now, of course, they still have one good run in them, you would have to imagine, like we're talking about, but the Orange are kind of just getting started with this core group in a way. I know Will Mark won't be back next year, Jake Stevens, guys like that, and Stevens, by the way, could be a very high draft pick on Tuesday night in the PLL draft, but in general, I think the fact that this is a young team and this is the first true postseason game of the Gary Gait era, it's good to play well in these games and get some confidence. And we know the story of Syracuse's season has been when they can execute in the fourth quarter, then they've been a totally unbeatable team at times. And you think back on some of their losses, it's been the fourth quarter execution that has haunted them. So if you could get some experience against some really good teams here in the ACC tournament, and like you did against Virginia, kind of make those winning plays down the stretch, then you would almost sort of put to bed that narrative going into the tournament, and they'd probably be in a much more confident situation in a close game in the NCAA tournament.
All right, what do you make of this game tonight? Because the first meeting with Duke, like it was weird in a lot of ways, right? It's like it's a Wednesday night, it's short rest, and then 10-4 is not a thing that anyone on earth would have predicted going into that game for like volume of goals, style of game, or anything. Well, what do you take from that game, and how does it apply tonight? Because that game made no sense at the time.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think the first 5 minutes of this game tonight are going to tell us a lot about how motivated each team is. I think we know Syracuse is going to come out ready to go. You'd have to think that Duke will be very motivated because not only did they lose to Syracuse, like you're saying, in that regular season meeting, which was kind of a head-scratcher how bad they played on offense in that game, they basically did the same type of offensive performance until the last 6 minutes of the game against UNC last week and played arguably, if not the Syracuse game, their worst game of the season. So Duke's in kind of a weird spot because usually Duke is trending up going into the postseason, and they made it to the national championship game last year, and they have Brennan O'Neill, and they have Dyson Williams, and all the guys that you would think would put them right in the conversation again. But they've been as unpredictable as any of the top teams this season. So in a way, they're coming in more vulnerable than normal. But I'd also have to imagine that Duke will be hungry coming off that tough loss to UNC. And you could make a case that maybe they have a little bit more to play for. I think they're pretty much totally locked into the NCAA tournament, barring something going really crazy. But in general, they could probably move up or down seed lines more than Syracuse based on how they play tonight.
Yeah. Do you have any clue what's going on with Duke? Like, they beat Virginia a couple weeks ago because they always beat Virginia. They literally haven't lost to Virginia in the regular season for 19 years, which is crazy. But besides that, they're losing to anyone. And there was almost no more inexplicable game in the league this year than what happened with them in Carolina last week and getting down 9 and still losing by 3. Do you have a clue what is going on with this team right now?
The only thing I could say is they have not gotten the level of dominance from Jake Naso that they're used to at the Face-Off X. Now, actually, in the Syracuse game, he won all 8 first-half face-offs. Then the Orange made a change, you would have to think, with their face-off crew in the second half, and he only managed 3 wins of the 9 second-half face-offs. Since that ACC opener for Duke and Syracuse, Naso is facing off at 42%. He was a first-team All-American last year, and he was banged up clearly in that UNC game. He got banged up in the late stages of their win over Virginia. Still actually made some goals in that game and sort of played through the injury very impressively, but he was 5 for 20 against UNC at the Face-Off X in the last game, and UNC does have a very talented freshman face-off guy in Brady Wambach, but for Jake Naso, that is shocking numbers. So that's going to be an interesting storyline. How healthy does Jake Naso look? They said he was a game-time decision for UNC. He played in that game and played about as bad as we've seen Jake Naso play in recent years, and he has been very good against Syracuse over the years. So, we always talk about it, but facing off is very important, and I think that's going to be a major storyline to watch from the opening whistle here tonight.
Cannot score if you don't have the ball. A lot easier to get the ball if you win the face-off going into it. All right, Tim, we'll be watching and listening tonight. Have a good call, and we'll see how it goes for the Orange and the Dukies tonight.
All right, thanks, Brian.
There he is, Tim Leonard. You can hear him and Kyle Federley coming up at 7:30 with Orange pregame over on TK99. Scheduled face-off is at 8 o'clock. I think they've actually left enough time between games scheduled to actually start on time. How about that? Actual forethought into planning game times and not screwing people over by saying it's going to, it'll start at 7:30. No, it won't. 8 o'clock. That's actually kind of reasonable. Okay, looking forward to this game. 8 o'clock tonight. You can watch it on ESPN. Our guy Anish Shroff is over there, friend of the show. He was on the other day. You can listen to Tim and Kyle over on TK. You've got all of the wonderful options in the world tonight. All right, right now, we're going to use this option. That option will be take a break. We're going to get Mike in here. We'll do a little 411. We'll take a spin around the world after this here on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.